I have a confession. I used to be on the dark side. I used to be a Wall Street investment banker. But I've reformed my ways. I'm now a philosopher who thinks about emotions and the good life. But I'm here today to talk less about that little career shift and more about the emotions, the boredom, the anxiety, the shame, the envy that I experienced in making that transition. This then is a story about how our emotions, particularly our negative emotions, can cue us into what we really care about. It's a story about how it can be good to feel bad. Now, what we'll be talking about is informed not just by my experiences moving from finance to philosophy, but also by the research that I and others have done on emotions like anxiety and shame. So let's get started. It's the late 1990s, and I've just graduated from college. I've got a great job as an investment banker in hand. These are some of the go-go years on Wall Street. So there I am, flying around on private jets, having fancy dinners on corporate expense accounts, zipping around New York City in limousines. Was it fun? You bet. But then it wasn't. The novelty wore off. The things that I had found interesting, the research, the financial modeling, the travel, just became boring. It was just spreadsheets as far as my eyes could see. I was so bored, I played this little game. I would take pencils and throw them like darts into the ceiling tiles above my desk. I was trying to see how many I could get to stick up there. I was dying for a distraction, anything to get away from those spreadsheets. But my boredom was telling me something. It was telling me to get out. But it was also pushing me to think about why I was unhappy and what better might look like. And when we look to the research on boredom, this is what it says. Boredom is a goad. We feel bored because we don't find whatever we're doing to be very stimulating. And when we're bored, we start searching around for something more interesting to do. In my case, I came to see in doing the banker thing, I wasn't using my head in the ways that I wanted to. But I also started to think back about how some of those philosophy classes that I'd taken as a college senior did stimulate me. And so I got this crazy idea. Quit the job. Get a job and pursue a career in philosophy. Now, my boredom was central in helping me see that it was time to leave and getting me thinking a little bit about what better might look like. But that's all it did. Whether I would actually be any good at philosophy remained a complete mystery. And that takes us to the next step in my emotional journey, from boredom to anxiety. So after I quit my job, I enrolled as an auditor in a graduate philosophy course. I wanted to see if philosophy was really going to be for me. I was super excited. I was starting this new adventure. This is exactly where I wanted to be. But very quickly, it became clear that I had no idea what I was doing. The other graduate students in the class, they were saying things that made absolutely no sense to me. Things like, the conclusion of a practical syllogism is an action. You can't cross the gap from an is to an ought. Does that make any sense to you? Yeah, me neither. I was in that class and it was like everybody but me was speaking Chinese. And that's when the anxiety hit. I mean, I just quit my job on Wall Street. My salary went from really, really good to like nothing. And the initial feedback that I was getting from the professor and the others in the class was that I was more or less clueless in the classroom. Add to all that I was also back in my parents' basement living. I mean, cue the cliches. Philosopher in parents' basement. So it was big time anxiety. I worried that I was making a huge mistake. And my anxiety, though unpleasant for sure, was good for me. I know that sounds strange. Anxiety, good? But give me a second here. In the thralls of my anxiety, I became acutely focused on my doubts and my worries. Had I made a mistake? Was I really hopeless? But my anxiety got me to push a little bit further. I started thinking about whether this hopelessness in the classroom was a temporary thing or a sign of genuine incompetence. And so to try and work through that, I started talking to people who had been where I was, other graduate students, professors in the department where I was. And from this, I got a better sense for what was underlying my anxieties. Yeah, grad school is challenging. And it's completely normal to feel overwhelmed, especially if you're like me and you're coming back to school after a stint working in the real world. So while my anxiety didn't go away, it started to mellow. More importantly, in working through my anxiety, I came to see that I could be a philosopher, at least after these growing pains subsided. So here's a little secret. My experiences with anxiety, they're not unusual. When you look at the research that I and others have done on anxiety, what we see is that anxiety oftentimes, but of course not always, is a useful emotion. Anxiety acts as kind of an alarm. It's a signal that we face a big challenge or uncertain problem. And when we're anxious, we start focusing intently on whatever it is that we're worried about. We're trying to work out what to do in a situation that we're in. And that's what my anxiety did for me. It helped me figure these things out. So hit fast forward. About a year has gone by, and I've just sent out a bunch of applications to PhD programs in philosophy. I'm taking the next step, really committing to this career change thing. Super excited about where I am. Around that same time, I'm at a family wedding, and I run into my uncle. This is a man that I've spent most of my life idolizing, a man whose opinions really matter to me. He asked me what I've been up to, and so I tell him, well, quit the Wall Street job, and I'm going to get a PhD in philosophy. Isn't this great? His response was immediate. What the hell are you doing? Wow. Didn't see that coming. Why is my uncle so upset? What's going on here? After that initial disorientation faded away, though, the shame kicked in. I was feeling ashamed because I felt I let my uncle down. Part of the reason that I admired him so much is that he had high expectations for me. He pushed me to do better. But given his comment, it seemed that I'd fallen short in his eyes. I'd failed. But this was good. My shame was good. Again, I know that sounds strange, so let me explain. Shame is a complicated emotion. It's tied up with our self-conceptions, our sense of who we are and who we want to be. And our self-conceptions are shaped by all kinds of things. The people we hang out with, influencers, society more generally. And this can lead us to feel ashamed about silly deficiencies. Things like how our nose looks, or our ethnicity, or where our parents went to college. It's this kind of shame that can be a problem. It's the shame that gives the emotion a bad name. But we can also be ashamed because our actions fall short of our values and our ideals. Things that, unlike what the influencers usually tell us, really are important. Things like being a good student or a compassionate husband. It's this kind of shame that philosophers like Confucius and Aristotle thought was really important, crucial to becoming a better person. So then the tricky thing about shame is trying to understand why we're experiencing it. Are we experiencing shame because we really did something shameful? Or are we feeling shame because we've failed to do what the influencers think we should be doing? In my case, this question amounted to something like this. In walking away from Wall Street, am I selling myself and my ideals short? And I think that this is what my uncle was getting at with this question at the wedding. He wasn't trying to make me feel ashamed. Rather, he wanted to make sure that if I was going to be making this radical career shift, I was doing it because I thought it would get someplace that I really wanted to be. So his question at the wedding and the shame it brought, it got me thinking. What do I want to do? What do I really care about? And the answer for me was that I wanted to be thinking about big questions, like the one I was wrestling with at that very moment. What makes for a life worth living? What does the good life look like? And so the answer for me started to be, you need to be a philosopher. Now, there's a subtlety here that's important. The kind of shame that I was experiencing was the right kind of shame. The kind of shame that Aristotle and Confucius saw as important. So this is good. But as I thought more about what I really cared about, I came to see that in walking away from Wall Street, I wasn't doing anything shameful. Actually, I was doing something that was in line with the things that I really cared about. So in a real sense, my shame was mistaken. But even though my shame was mistaken, it was still good for me to be experiencing it. Working through that messy emotion helped me see that I was on the right track. It was kind of an emotional gut check. So, stepping back, if my anxiety helped me see that I could be a philosopher, my shame and working through it helped me see that I was moving in the right direction. So I was learning from my emotions. This is good. But there were more bumps in the road ahead. So hit fast forward again. A couple of years have gone by, and I'm making progress on my degree. I decide to go back to New York City to visit with some old friends from my banking days. Our conversations are varied, but there's a common theme. My old colleagues are all talking about the business deals they're doing, the cars, the condos, the clothes that their plump paychecks allowed them to buy. And here I am, a measly grad student. I can barely buy a round of beers. I feel weird about all this. I'm not sure why. Then it hits me. I'm envious. And that's even more strange. I mean, I quit Wall Street exactly because this kind of stuff left me bored. So why the envy? To get a better sense for what's going on here, we need to know a little bit more about envy. Envy, as we all know, is supposed to be one of the 7 deadly sins. What's less appreciated, though, is that envy can be a force for the good. Think about it. When we're feeling envious, we're comparing ourselves to others. And we feel envy because we think somebody else, one of our rivals, is doing better than us. Envy then pushes us to try and become better, to outdo them. So notice, getting the good stuff out of envy requires that we have a sense for who our rivals are and whether we should be trying to outdo them. Now, it took me a while to figure all this out, but I was mistaken in thinking that my old colleagues were rivals. Yeah, they had been back when I was in banking, but they weren't anymore. And once I realized this, I started to see that I didn't need a condo in the mountains. I didn't need the newest BMW. These weren't the people I needed to try and outdo. My envy started to fade. So that's the tale of my emotional journey. But there's an epilogue to my story here that I want to conclude with. I was recently asked whether, given all the research on emotions that I do, if I ever feel things like anxiety or shame. Of course I do. I'm human. But I'm now better able to understand what I'm feeling and why. So for instance, I was recently changed jobs again, but this time it wasn't anxiety provoking. Part of the reason is that I'm still doing what I love. I just moved from doing philosophy at one university to another. But other things do make me anxious, and they should. Our parents get Alzheimer's. Things go sideways at work. Our kids get bullied at school. What should we do in situations like these? Those are anxiety-provoking situations. And it's completely normal to feel anxiety when we face a situation like that. In fact, being anxious in those situations reflects well on you. It's a sign that you're emotionally attuned to the gravity of the situation that you're experiencing. You're worried about something that really is worrisome. But of course, our anxiety and our emotions more generally can get it wrong. So there's this skill we need to develop, the skill of understanding what we're feeling and why. So then putting all of this together, what have we learned? Well, we can see that there can be a real upside to feeling bad. But we can also see that we need to practice working through our messy emotions. Thank you.